Hello and welcome to A Walk to Remember. My name is Dwayne Baker-Henderson, and as always, I'll be your host as we explore some of the truths and the myths surrounding postpartum depression, as well as some tips to make your transition or somebody else's transition through postpartum depression a little bit easier. Now, today I want to talk about relationships and how postpartum depression and depression in general can really affect a relationship between a husband and a wife or partners in that closest of relationships. I've just read an article from WebMD surrounding that very thing, depression and relationships. And in that article, basically they say the differing perspectives of the people in that relationship can cause a rift between them. And I saw something similar when Corey and I were going through our postpartum experience. The gist of the article is that when one individual in the relationship is suffering through something like depression, the other partner sometimes feels obliged to pick up slack. Excuse me. For instance, on days when Corey wasn't feeling her strongest, stuff still needed to get done that normally she would do, and so those responsibilities I would pick up if I possibly could, and was happy to do so. And I think that's true with most relationships. The intent is good, but what can happen if that continues over a long period of time is that resentment can build up, and jealousy and anger and things like that in the relationship, and that just tends to pull the relationship apart. And so I want to give you some tips on how to avoid that. Some things that I learned during this period, some things that we both did to keep our relationship strong, and just some very simple things that you can do to actually grow your relationship through this period instead of having it become strained. The first tip I want to give you is to not assume. It's kind of built into us, I think, that we make assumptions based on what we see. And I know that there's a saying that says, assuming makes an ass out of you and me. Sorry about the language. And that is very true. We make these assumptions based on our own perceptions, and they may be way off base. And when it comes to something like postpartum depression, or any other kind of mood disorder, where regular thought is disrupted to a certain extent, and thought patterns change a little bit. Sometimes we make assumptions based on how we used to know the person that's in front of us, if we are the partner. And they might do something that makes a great deal of sense to them, but doesn't make any sense to you at all. It might seem quite irrational or a drastic change from how they used to be. And making assumptions can become very damaging to the relationship. I'll give you an example. One day Corey was having a particularly stressful day when she was going through postpartum depression. She felt very sad. She felt very alone. She felt just very, very isolated. And I wanted to give her some time to herself, so I ran a bath for her and I made her some tea and invited her to utilize the bath. And she couldn't accept that as a gift from me. And to me that felt like she was angry at me for something. But what was actually happening is she felt really guilty that she was getting this when she didn't feel worthy of it. And my assumption that she was angry at me did cause a fairly intense discussion, and it wasn't fair of me to assume that she was angry instead of just finding out what was going on. And so that could have led to a great deal of stress and turmoil in our relationship. So I'll encourage you not to assume. It's very important not to. It's hard not to, but it's very important not to. If you are confused about something, ask. That's the easiest thing you can do. The second thing is to expect the best from your partner. You fell in love with this person and you got married, or you became parents together because of your attraction to this other person and their qualities. When somebody is going through postpartum depression or another mood disorder, their outward appearance, their behavior can change to the point where they seem like a different person sometimes. But it's always important to expect the best from your partner. The person that you knew is still in there. They're still hidden behind the veil of the postpartum depression. Assume that they're in there and that they're still in control. Sometimes you'll get results that aren't the best. Sometimes there'll be some difficult things that happen, but expect the best, and you'll be showing your partner respect and love, and you'll get to see that other person again when the postpartum depression fades. So that's tip number 2. The third one is to not have unspoken rules. There are certain things that bother me, and there's certain things that bother Corey, and we've talked about those things because it's just part of who I am. It's part of who she is, and if the other doesn't understand that those things bother you, or the things that you do bother them, that can cause a great deal of strain on the relationship, especially when emotional responses are heightened, like in postpartum depression. So really talk through and clarify what it is that is important for your partner not to do, or not to say, or any of that kind of stuff. Don't keep it hidden. Don't keep those personal boundaries hidden. Talk to the person who is in your closest relationship. The fourth thing I wanted to talk about is symbolic meanings, and getting rid of them if you can, or at least understanding what they are. And this is a little bit more difficult to explain, but I think I'll do it through an example. I come from a very quiet household. When I grew up, there were lots of periods in our home when it was quiet, when there wasn't talking, there wasn't noise, there wasn't a lot of interaction. We still did have conversation, we still talked about stuff, but it wasn't constant. There were times when I spent time alone in my room, and where my sister did the same, where my mom was sitting reading, and that was okay. That was perfectly okay. Corey, on the other hand, comes from a house where there was almost constant talking, constant noise, constant debate. There was yelling. There was very emotional discussion about things. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. That's just where we come from. And when we got together as a couple, those tendencies had symbolic meaning for us. For instance, when I was quiet, to me that meant that I was content and I was happy and all was right with the world. But to Corey, that meant that I was angry and that something was going on in me that was not positive. And the same held true for when Corey became really chatty and conversational and really wanted to talk to me, and there was no silence. I thought she was angry, whereas it's the exact opposite for both of us. That's what we had grown to expect out of our homes. When it was quiet in my house, everything was right. When it was noisy in Corey's house, everything was right. So those symbolic meanings that we assign to things need to be talked about and gotten rid of if possible. Because if your partner is doing something that you assign a meaning to that doesn't hold true for them, that can cause quite a bit of resentment and anger when it doesn't need to. So get rid of the symbolic meanings. The fifth one was huge for me. I think all men in Western society are raised to be the problem solvers. We're supposed to be the ones that go out and earn the bacon for the family and solve the problem of financial stability and protection and that kind of thing. And when that is brought into a relationship, sometimes that can be kind of damaging too, especially when it comes to conversation. Something that I didn't understand until we were going through our postpartum journey is that sometimes when Corey came to me wanting to talk, it wasn't about fixing a problem. And so offering solutions at that point was counterproductive. But that was my natural tendency, was to offer solutions every time she talked to me. And I came to realize over this several months that we were going through postpartum depression that sometimes she just wanted me to listen and to be a sounding board and be empathetic to her. And that was something I didn't know initially. So tip number 5 is don't try and fix everything. I came to the point where I would ask Corey, are you looking for solutions, or do you want me to just listen? And that way I knew what my role was to be in that particular conversation, whether it was just to be part of the conversation or to offer solutions. And that was huge for me. And I think may have done a lot towards strengthening our relationship coming out of that experience. So don't try and fix everything is number 5. Tip number 6, and the last, is to talk about your current experience. Talk about postpartum depression if you're in the middle of it. Talk about what you're feeling and experiencing, because your perspectives are going to be very different. To this day, Corey and my perspective are still quite different about what happened. And I think that has a lot to do with Corey living inside of the postpartum depression and me living on the outside of it and witnessing it from the outside. It's created very different perspectives of what happened. And the more we talk about it and share what each of us felt and what we were going through, I think the stronger our relationship gets. And so our relationship now, after going through postpartum depression, is far stronger than it was before. And that's because of these 6 things. So I encourage you to put those into your daily life as well. Check out this article from WebMD. Again, link in the description below. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you think somebody else might see some value in it, please share it with them as well. Give me your comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and also to hear what your experiences with postpartum depression have been. Subscribe to the channel if you want to be updated on when I put out another video. Every Tuesday I put out another Walk to Remember video like this one, and on Fridays I have my weekly vlog where I talk about what's on my mind at that particular moment. Until the next video, have a great day, be well, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.